This is Jamie Drummond for Good Food Revolution. I am here with Oenologist and Estate Director from Ornellaia Bolgheri, Tuscany, Axel Heinz. How are you today, sir?
Very fine, very glad to be here in Toronto.
Now, you don't make it to Toronto too often, but you've been teaching us today a little bit about the terroir that is integral to the core of Ornellaia. Now, when people think about Ornellaia, perhaps they don't think about terroir and perhaps more about the influence that man has over the wine. I'd love to hear a little more about your philosophy when it comes to that.
You know, first of all, probably when it comes to Ornellaia, we should talk about terroir in the plural, because being a blended wine, Ornellaia is really the sum of a patchwork of different grape varieties, obviously, but also different places, different vineyard sites that have all quite substantial differences, ranging from vineyards that are planted on pebbly, clayish soils, some clay on limestone, sandy soils, various elevations, and all this forms a huge patchwork from which we can compose the complex blend of Ornellaia. Man is essential to terroir because, after all, man is responsible for all the choices. We plant, hopefully, the right grape variety in the right place, and then we are amazed by the strong expression of a terroir. But if we get it wrong, if we plant the wrong grape variety, the wrong rootstock, then possibly what makes a terroir so specific will never express itself.
So we've been speaking about a number of grape varietals. Let's speak about the reds for now, that you grow at Ornellaia, a number of different vineyard sites, and the different treatments that you give those particular wines when they are aging. Before you blend them together. I find the whole process, which for me harkens back to the way people used to make old Barolos, assembling the wines after aging them individually, to be quite fascinating. Please explain a little more about that.
Well, that's I think that's a key of one of the keys of our approach. We really try to treat the fruit from each single vineyard side as an individual in the first phase. So we're not necessarily thinking of a protocol that makes this wine look like Ornellaia. We just want this wine to express what makes its vineyard side so specific. And then we put all these fairly different and variable individuals together to a whole which becomes then Ornellaia. So that's really the key. And we really try to avoid to have a dogmatic approach. We try to, I know it's an odd word, we try to listen to our wines in the sense that we're observing and acting according to our observations rather than imposing any sort of prefix protocol to our vinification.
Now that's interesting, because you were speaking earlier about the way it sometimes, perhaps irritates is the wrong word, but the way it kind of bemuses you when people speak about vintages being great vintages, poor vintages and the like. And for that reason you've begun to name your wines after the vintages. Well,
indeed, we were more and more becoming frustrated with that limited approach in just speaking about vintages in terms of their supposed greatness. It allows you very little in terms of storytelling, because first of all there's always the temptation to sell or to present one vintage as being necessarily bigger than the previous one. And it's also true that there's so much to say about making wine and how to make it in quite remarkably different circumstances. We're sometimes very affectionate to our smaller vintages because we know it was so difficult to make them. It was sometimes much more difficult than in a grape year. Actually, making a great wine in a great vintage seems the easiest thing in the world. When you have more challenging conditions, it's really about courage, it's about skill, and it's also about the greatness of terroir, because when you have to have those really remarkable and unique and great vineyard sites, not only will they produce wines of very strong individual character, but they will also more regularly produce really fine wines.
Well, I found today's tasting absolutely fascinating, and I think people got a lot from that tasting today, and perhaps not what they were expecting from an Ornellaia tasting the composite parts of everything that makes up both your second wine and your premier wine. Thank you very much for your time today, and thank you for your chat with Good Food Revolution.
Thank you.
Bye for now.